Who's ready for NASCAR off-season part 2? I'm not. Will somebody please bring racing back? How's it going, everyone? My name is Eric and welcome to Out of the Groove. It's been a couple days since my last video. Hope you all had a good weekend. Hope your week is off to a relatively good start. We have a lot to cover in today's episode. There were a lot of reports the last couple days regarding NASCAR's near future. Even President Steve Phelps gave a statement this morning, or actually held a press conference, I believe, this morning, so we have some stuff to react to from that. We have a lot to discuss in today's episode, but before I get to all the kind of doom and gloom, because a lot of it's not great, a lot of it's not super great news, but before we get to all that, I do want to point this out. Look at that! Silver play button. At the end of last year, we hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel, and I just recently got to look at this awesome oh, look at that. You can see my Matt Kenseth flag on the other end of the room. It's got a perfect reflective surface. Anyway, yeah, I finally have this in my possession. Look, you can even see my own reflection in there. Look, I'll just do the whole show. How's it going, everyone? Welcome to Out of the Groove. I'm talking out of the silver plate. This thing is so shiny. Anyway, I'm getting distracted. I know it was a few months ago, but I want to again thank every single one of you who subscribed to the channel, who supported the channel for all these years, because I don't do it for the awards. I don't really care about the awards, but this is pretty freaking cool. Expect to see this in the background of a few more videos from now on, because this is just really cool. Thank you everyone who supported the channel, supported the show, supported what I've been doing here for, I started this YouTube channel when I was 13 years old. 13! Oh god, it's gonna be 9 years this year. I've been doing this for almost half my life. Not quite, we got a few more years till we get to that, but I've been doing this for a long time. And your support means the world to me. And so it's cool to kind of have this physical thing. I love the flag in the background, the reflection. It's cool to have this physical thing here to commemorate that. Thank you guys a ton for your support. Anyway, let's get on with the episode. I just wanted to show that off because otherwise if I didn't, people are just gonna leave comments like, is that a silver play button? No, so I wanted to address the elephant in the room. Now to address the even larger elephant in the room. It's just taking up all the space in here. NASCAR has postponed races for approximately the next 8 weeks in accordance with the Center of Disease Control's recent recommendations. NASCAR yesterday released a formal statement regarding this news. The health and safety of our fans, industry, and the communities in which we race is our most important priority, so in accordance with recent CDC guidance, NASCAR is currently postponing all race events through May 3rd, with plans to return racing in Martinsville. We appreciate the patience of our fans and we look forward to returning to the racetrack. We intend to hold all 36 races this season, with future rescheduling soon to be determined as we continue to monitor the situation closely with public health officials and medical experts. What is important now transcends the world of sports, and our focus is on everyone's safety and well-being as we navigate this challenging time together. That statement was made yesterday, so yes, NASCAR has postponed the next good handful of races. We already knew Atlanta this last weekend was postponed. Homestead Miami this weekend already knew was postponed, but now this includes Texas, Bristol, there's that off weekend for Easter, but then after that, Richmond, Talladega, and Dover, which was originally going to be the first weekend of May, has also now been postponed. So a lot of races there. Martinsville, Virginia, which the Cup race is May 9th, I believe, or the weekend's like the 7th through 9th. That right now is the first weekend NASCAR is planning on being back. But remember, things can change. This is still a very fluid, a very dynamic situation. I like people using that word. Things change very quickly. So while NASCAR right now plans on returning May 9th, I'm sorry, at Martinsville, that definitely can still change, and we'll probably start to get an idea in the next few weeks whether or not that date will remain the return date of NASCAR. Things do change very quickly. I'll bet in the next 3 or 4 weeks we'll probably start to have a better idea whether or not that May 9th date is realistic. But yes, NASCAR has now announced postponements for a good handful of races. A lot of races. You know, in my video a couple days ago, I gave you guys kind of my best case, my worst case scenario. We're getting closer to my worst case scenario, closer than I thought we'd. I thought we'd be somewhere in the middle. I thought we'd postpone maybe 5 races. We're up to, 7, 8 races now. Closer to the 10 races I kind of put as like worst case scenario. We could still reach that scenario. That is not out of the question at this point, because this isn't going away. Get used to fast changes. Everything's changing quickly. Everyone's kind of getting used to it, I guess, at this point. But we have some other things to discuss today because NASCAR didn't stop there. I'll do a video maybe tomorrow, actually, or later this week, talking about what I think NASCAR should do with the schedule going forward, because they're going to have a lot of questions. They're going to have a lot of decisions to make. Do they run double headers? Will they run midweek races? They have some off weekends to play with. They have a couple weeks off in the summer that were originally for the Olympics that maybe they could mess around with. The difficulty there is the broadcast partners. Fox is supposed to broadcast all these races, but later in the year it becomes NBC. Are we going to mix in Fox broadcasts during the NBC part of the season? How's that going to work? How's this going to affect the playoffs? Because with double headers, we go to Texas, we go to Dover, we go to Richmond, we go to a lot of those tracks twice a year, but a lot of those tracks like Richmond, Texas, Talladega, some of those ones I just mentioned, their second date is in the playoffs. So, like, if, say, we run 2 Texases in October, does that mean those 2 Texas races are both gonna be round of 8 races? I don't really think anyone wants to see that, but I'll go more in depth on the schedule this week. Adam Stern from Sports Business Journal reported today that there is a good chance NASCAR could reveal their new schedule ideas, their new schedule changes, as soon as this week. What's it, Tuesday when I'm filming this and uploading this? By Friday, we could have the new schedule for 2020 worked out. They still haven't gotten the 2021 schedule ready, but they're already making changes to this year's. They're already modifying the schedule with this year, but I'll be shocked if they're able to come up with a definitive plan by this week, but maybe they will. So I'll try to get my video out close, but we'll have a lot to talk about this week, I'm sure. NASCAR President Steve Phelps did say in his press conference this morning that he really doesn't want to mess with the 10 race block that is the playoffs. He'd like all 10 of those races to stay where they're at and still be the 10 playoff races. But he obviously admits that that may be out of his control at this point because they have to make up. They really want to make up all these other races, and it might be tough to squeeze in Texas or Atlanta or Richmond in the middle of the week or some other weekend during some of those off. It might get really tough to squeeze all those races in, so keep that in mind. Last thing I'll say about the schedule before I move on, NASCAR did say that they are intending still to run all 36 races this year. The All-Star race could be in jeopardy. I'd say there's a decent chance the All-Star race is in jeopardy, but obviously that's speculation at this point. The only race that I've seen any reports that might be in jeopardy, that might get canceled, just straight up canceled, is the Homestead Miami Speedway race that was supposed to be run this coming weekend. That is the one race that I've seen reports that suggest it could be canceled. This is what I saw from The Athletic. They said, the race at Homestead is one that could be outright canceled, a decision partially made easier due to significantly low advanced ticket sales, sources said. Homestead Miami Speedway, it sucks. The future of that track is very much in question, I'd say, since it's no longer the championship race. It's no longer home of the championship weekend. It's just another mile and a half in a very expensive area of the country that a lot of people would like to snatch out from underneath it. So Homestead Miami Speedway's future is definitely in question, and if their race gets canceled this year, just straight up does not get run, they don't get that TV money, they don't get that money from ticket sales and everything, really could spell bad news for the future of that track. I don't want to speculate, but that's from The Athletic. That's, you know, suggested that there's a chance if any track ends up on the chopping block, any race ends up on the chopping block this year, Homestead's probably the first to go. Sucks because I know there's a lot of race fans in Florida. I've seen them, I know they're there, but it just is what it is. That track is seen better days, for sure. Anyway, I'm gonna move on from the schedule for the most part right now. I'll talk about that later this week, especially if NASCAR makes some announcements as soon as it sounds like they might. We'll move on from that though for the time being. Let's talk about rule changes, because NASCAR this morning, I believe, sent out a memo changing the rules, banning all testing during this indefinite hiatus. Here it is. Due to unprecedented events, all testing, not directly related to the next gen car, is banned until further notice. This includes, but is not limited to, wind tunnels, full and scale models, climactic tunnels, 7/8 posters, K&C rigs, static and dynamic, driver simulators, etc. Now when they're talking about driver simulators, don't worry, they're not talking about iRacing, they're talking about the big, expensive simulators that a lot of teams have at their race shop. That's what they're talking about. But no wind tunnel testing, obviously no on-track testing, that's obvious. But there you go, a straight up ban on testing. I saw some people asking, why would NASCAR do this? It's pretty clear in my opinion, and we'll talk about this more in a second, but because there's no racing happening, a lot of teams aren't really bringing in any income. And some of the smaller teams, especially on the Xfinity Truck Series side of things, might be struggling a little bit right now to make ends meet because there is no money coming in, money that they expected. There is no money coming in right now for a lot of those teams. And so especially on the Cup Series side of things, if everyone's still allowed to test, the big teams like Gibbs, Penske, Hendrick, who probably still have some money saved up, they'd be blowing all their money on testing, while the small teams really don't have the resources right now to test. And so it would just be a reason for the big teams to get further and further ahead. It's an unfair advantage at this point. These are unprecedented events. This is not an event anyone saw coming, and it's unfair to punish certain teams while other teams are able to get ahead during this event. Think of it as like a long-term red flag. You know, in a race, when the red flag is out, you can't work on the cars. Think of it as like this whole hiatus is just a big, long, extended red flag. You can't work on the cars, you can't work on your stuff, you can't test, you can't do anything. It's a red flag. Everything's red flag for the time being. The whole world is basically red flagged right now. Now, the last big thing I want to talk about in this video, I kind of hinted at it a second ago, but I do want to talk about some of the financial strains that are going to be put on a lot of the race teams during this time. Not just the race teams themselves, but people who work in and around the sport, especially those who freelance. I know people who are like photographers for race teams, and during this hiatus, if they're not at the track taking pictures, they're not really getting paid. So a lot of people right now are kind of out of work, and it's a tough situation because everybody obviously wants to be at the track, everybody wants to be working, but with no racing happening, no money is really coming in for a lot of these race teams, and therefore they can't afford, I mean, they just literally cannot afford in some cases to keep paying their workers the way they always have. That's why, from what I've heard, there's already been some layoffs on some of the smaller teams. And I've seen reports, there's a report on Fox Sports that suggests that if this hiatus continues to last as long as it's predicted to last, there could be some small teams, specifically on the Trucks or Xfinity Series side of things, that might straight up not make it out of this. This might be the final nail in the coffin for some of those teams that perhaps were already struggling. I know in the Cup Series, some teams are pretty dependent on the money they get from the charter agreement, from having a charter. Just having a charter ensures that you're going to get a good amount of purse money, or basically money from a big pot, allocated to you, and a lot of smaller teams, even in the Cup Series, are kind of reliant on that money to stay in business. I mean, that's why a lot of those teams you see running 38th each week don't even have sponsorship on their car, but they still stay in business because they're getting money from the charter agreement. It is what it is. It's one of the reasons the charter agreement has become quite polarizing. The charter system's been quite polarizing during its short time in the NASCAR world. But on the Xfinity and Truck Series side of things, even there, a lot of the smaller teams are very heavily reliant on the purse money they get from racing each week. Even if you finish in last place, that little bit of money you get goes a long way for some of these smaller teams. And right now, when there's no racing happening, they're not even getting that. They're getting nothing because there's no racing. TV is not able to sell advertisement that they were expecting to be able to sell. Racetracks aren't selling tickets they thought they were going to be able to sell, and aren't selling hot dogs, aren't selling merch. Teams aren't able to sell sponsorship. They're not going to the races and earning purse money that they thought they were going to be getting. And because of all these sudden, and in most cases unexpected, cutbacks in some of these smaller teams, it's just the nature of the world. We've seen this in all sorts of areas of business. Companies laying people off due to cancellations, due to loss of business because everything's basically shut down during this whole outbreak. NASCAR is definitely not immune to that, and so a lot of these smaller teams likely are going to be laying people off. I mean, I said in a couple episodes ago, Joe Gibbs Racing even suggested if this hiatus lasted more than a few weeks, they would have to lay some people off. And that's Joe Gibbs Racing. They're the top of the sport. They got more money than pretty much anyone. And if they're going to have to lay people off eventually because they don't have any money coming in, then yes, these smaller teams are definitely going to have to lay people off. And it sucks because people now are going to be out of jobs. These jobs will likely still be around once this hiatus ends, and that is the one good news here, is that once this hiatus does end, if NASCAR really does run all 36 Cup races as well as all the Xfinity and Truck races they need to make up, second half of this year, they're going to be running a lot of races. They're going to be running 3 races a week sometimes. That's a lot of paychecks. So if you are able to make it through this 2-month, hopefully it's only 2-month kind of hiatus, there's possibly a big pot of gold at the end of the rainbow here. But getting through this time is going to be difficult. And according to Fox Sports, according to some other reports, some teams, especially in the Trucks and Xfinity Series, they're going to have it harder than others. And I don't want to sit here and just say woe is me to the team owners. Obviously it's tough for them because a lot of these guys have invested a lot of time, effort, and money into their race teams just to be hit hard by this. But I obviously also want to mention the crew guys specifically, who aren't necessarily salaried by the teams. Like the drivers are still going to be getting paid at least most of what their contract is probably owed during this time period. You know, a lot of those people are still going to be getting paid. Some of the day-to-day crew guys that work at the shop or people who travel with the team, a lot of them are not going to be getting paid. And that sucks. Many of them are going to be laid off for this time period, and I definitely think we need to think about them and express concern for them and their well-being during this tough time. I saw some people were asking questions about whether or not NASCAR should maybe consider taking some sort of action to help ensure some of these teams can stay in business. Maybe one suggestion I've heard is if these teams can prove that they are going to race later this year at certain races, maybe go ahead and kind of pay them ahead of time here, like give them last place money, like purse money now, sort of as like almost like a down payment. I don't know if that makes sense. But if these teams can prove that they will be racing, say in like September or something like that, give them some of the purse money now. At least give them some of that money up front so that they can afford to keep the doors open, keep paying guys, at least to some extent for the time being. Once that race actually happens in September, depending on where they finish, they get the other little bit of money perhaps. But that's been an idea thrown around. Steve Phelps didn't really address that in his press conference today. Phelps said, "We're working with our teams closely industry-wide to make sure we're all financially viable moving forward running this postponement of our races." But he didn't offer any specific plan like what I suggested, paying some of the purse money up front. He didn't offer any sort of plan there. So unclear whether or not they are going to go forward with anything that actually helps out these teams that are struggling. But definitely something to think about if you're fans. At the end of the day, assuming NASCAR is able to run most or all of the schedule this year, the teams will make most of their money back. The teams ultimately probably won't come out too far behind this year compared to other years, so it won't be the end of the world assuming NASCAR is able to run most of the races. But until that happens, yeah, teams are going to be running at a loss, and that's going to cause layoffs. That's going to be tough for jobs in the industry. The one thing we can just hope for, and I think I'm confident will happen, is that these jobs will come back once racing gets back underway. These jobs aren't going away for forever, but it is a concern. Fox Sports did report that there are some teams that could ultimately close down entirely because of this. Hopefully that is not the case, But that's just something to be aware of and something to think about. Those are really all the big things I want to hit on today. Obviously later this week, the schedule might come out, NASCAR's ideas for double headers or midweek races, all sorts of stuff. Off-season, off-week races, all that type of stuff. It'll be interesting to see what NASCAR comes up with and when they announce that. I'm also curious to see how this affects the next-gen car in 2021. I just heard earlier during that ban on all testing, it does not include the next-gen car, so it sounds like NASCAR is still gonna keep working along, doing what they can do to get that car ready for next year. But I don't know. We'll be interested to see if that gets slowed down. I'm sure NASCAR has a stack this high on their desk of things they need to take care of right now, and I'm afraid the next-gen car might have slipped into the fold a little bit here because there's other things that are more pressing at the moment, but that all remains to be seen. That's just speculation. But thank you guys for watching this episode. I hope you enjoyed. Subscribe if you are new. Even though NASCAR is on kind of a hiatus, we will still be making videos every single week. We will find things to talk about. Trust me on that one. Follow me on Instagram, follow me on Twitter. Of course, a big thank you to my Patreon supporters. I couldn't do this show without the support I get from each and every single one of you over there on Patreon. Once this season ultimately does get back up and running, I'm going to plan to be at some more racetracks this year, and that would not be possible without the support I get from y'all on Patreon. So if you also want to help out and support this channel, if you like how I'm covering the sport, you like how I talk about things, definitely go check out that top link down in the description. I greatly appreciate it. Thanks for watching, everyone. I should be back later this week with some other episodes. Keep an eye out for those. And again, a huge thank you to all of you guys for helping me reach 100,000 subscribers. I cannot express my gratitude enough for all of you who have supported the channel or subscribed at any point in time over the last, geez, almost 9 years. I greatly appreciate it. Whenever I see you guys at the track, sometimes some of y'all will say you've been watching since like 2014, and blows my mind. That really blows my mind. So I really appreciate the support from all of you for all these years, and thank you so much. Best is yet to come. I sure hope, and I sure believe so. So thanks for the support, guys, and I'll see you again very, very soon.